So first of all, but before we even go to the 3 sets of vows, but before we even go into that, I want to try and describe in a practical way that we will immediately understand and recognize what actually we're doing with a vow. But we never think of it this way. It's quite an eye-opener if you think of it this way. So I was thinking about someone who plays the piano or someone who makes a cake. Now, even especially something like playing a piano or doing an incredible skill like becoming a tennis player. You don't get a book, do you? When you join Federer's club and he decides Federer's your coach, he doesn't give you a big fat book with 4,000 vows in it, does he? But he might as well. Because what is a vow? You think about this. It is so obvious. It is so logical and you can't argue with it. But it's not how we think. So, if you want to become a tennis player, you know you have to train, forget your mind, but you have to train your body to do the most precise actions. They spend 8 hours a day for years on end, do they not, training their bodies to do what's called playing tennis. But it's not written in a book exactly what you have to do. Now you hold the racket this way, then you do this, and you don't do this, and you do this, and you don't do that. But if you did write a handbook, this is exactly what you would have. You'd have a series of hundreds of vows, which are decisions to refrain from something, and you'd have hundreds of commitments, which is a decision to do something. That's exactly what it would be. What do you think a cookbook is? Do this, do that, do this. It implies don't do this, you do not do this, you do not do that. We don't complain. We don't have a panic attack and go to the therapist and think that our cooking teacher is bullying us into doing and not doing things. We are grateful for the cooking teacher to tell us exactly not what to do. It's like a revelation. Tell me more. What shouldn't I do? We are so happy to hear it because we know the end result is turning yourself into the best cook, turning yourself into the best tennis player. Everything is this. If you think about it, our body and our speech, and this is what in Buddhism, you see, vows are only about behavior. Vows are not about the mind. They're only about what you do with your body and what you do with your speech. What you don't do with your body and what you don't do with your speech, in this case. Now, vows, when it comes to cooking, you don't need your speech. You need your body, okay? Your body's got to do certain things. Hear it this way. You hold it this way. You whip this way. You put that spoon, that spoon, this size. It's so precise. And there would be hundreds of vows, hundreds of commitments. But we don't have them written down. We just learn them. We listen. We watch our mummy do the cook, and we copy our mummy. You go to learn anything. Everything is like this. We're programming our body and our speech to refrain from certain things, by implication, therefore, to do certain things. It's just the most obvious thing, but we never call it a vow. So we don't feel suffocated by it. We want to know exactly what we should and should not do. Why? Not to please our mummy cook, not to please our tennis player and get praised, which is what we think of as religion. You get praised, you do God's will, and you'll get praised and sent to heaven. I'm not being sarcastic. No, because it's turning you into the person you want to become. That's the essence of it. How anyone could argue with it. You'd want, give me more vows, please. This is not enough. I want more. Please tell me what else I shouldn't do. It's so obvious. And it's got okay. There are many in Buddhism. They talk about natural negativities and then sort of prescribed ones. For example, many of Buddha's rules are Buddha's rules. When monks and nuns started living together, all the vows of monks and nuns, they just grew organically, you know. Like, you know, you go live with a bunch of people, you all rent a flat together, an apartment together, and within a week you've got signs up on the kitchen. Please clean your own dishes. Do not do this. Do not touch the third shelf because that's my food. And before you know it, you've got 47 rules in the house after 1 week. We get that. So rules evolve organically. We get that. And that's how Buddha's rules evolved as well. All the vows, when you read the list of the nuns' vows, the fully ordained nuns, you know, they sound so quaint and cute, but they evolved as a result of women living together, and it's to do with learning how to, like the same with your tennis rules. So they've discovered a recent one, let's say, about the particular racket has this handle, so you make sure you don't do that. We need to know these things. We want to become the best tennis player. So Buddha's rules, you've got natural negativities, such as killing. And this is the crucial difference between Buddha and Jesus, or Buddha and God for that matter. This is a massive point, and to continually remember. Jesus says don't kill. Well, so does Buddha. So does your grandmother probably. Now, if you're a Christian, you ask Jesus, why should I not kill Jesus? Give me the logic. And he will tell you, because, Robina, you are the product of God. God made you. He is the boss. So you commit a sin. You break that vow, if you like the words, because God said not to do it. That's by definition what a sin is. That is by definition. My Jesuit priest friend told me that. What defines a sin is by definition what is the action that God said you shouldn't do. That's what makes it negative. Now, for Buddha, there's no equivalent in terms of the natural world. It's all natural law for the Buddha. This priest told me there's some aspect of natural law, meaning people don't like getting killed. But the main reason it is wrong is because God said. Now that's pretty powerful, but that is not Buddha. He is not a creator. He does not make up things. He does not own the laws of the universe. What he has done is observe the natural laws of the universe. And then he's now come up with this law of karma, this natural law. That a negative action called killing is negative. First, this negative, the heaviest negative actions always are those that harm others. All actions, the Buddha says, that are driven by a delusion are by their nature negative, because they'll all harm you. They'll all harm you. That's the real point. And even at this first level of practice, in the first level of vows, well, in the first level of practice, there's 3 sets of vows, 3 levels of practice. Well, there's different ways of describing. There's the pratimoksha, or individual liberation, which is the first and second scopes, or the lowest and middle scopes of the Lam Rim, or the Hinayana level of the teachings, or the Theravada level of the teachings, or what I like to call junior school and high school. And that's called the teachings related to how to help you become your own, to become liberated from your suffering. And the vows there are either the 5 layperson's vows, there's various sets of these, but this is one set, the 5 layperson's vows, or the the different levels of vows for monks and nuns. They're the same level of vows. And they're all about don't. Don't do this, and don't do that, and don't do this. Then you've got the bodhisattva vows, which are more profound and more expansive, and we'll discuss briefly the differences, not so much the details. And then you've got the tantric vows, the most advanced ones. And they're all, like I said, about behavior. And they're all, in other words, they're all mostly not. There's some other one, some in their commitments like do this and do that, but mostly they're not. Like when you're driving a car, you just you're not supposed to put your foot on the accelerator at the same time as the brake. You're not supposed to go over more than 70 miles an hour. You don't do this and you don't do that. They're the rules, and you learn them because you don't want to get killed and you don't want to get fined and you don't want to you don't want to harm yourself. So all the vows here, Buddha's vows, his exhortations, not this and not that, are to help turn us into a Buddha. That's the point. Like, everything you do that Federer says you shouldn't do is to turn you into the best tennis player. Everything you do when you learn piano is to turn you into the best piano player. So you have a massive vested interest. Whereas you think about, when we think of being a naughty girl, you're a naughty girl. You shouldn't have done this. You'll get punished. If you have that view, which is what we tend to have, this dualistic view of punishment and reward, then that's when we take no responsibility, because we don't think it matters if you do a naughty thing as long as you don't get caught. That's really what we believe, So as long as mummy doesn't see you do the naughty action, oh, I got away with it, we'll think. Well, for the Buddha, that's a demented idea. That's like thinking, because your doctor told you not to smoke. Why not, doctor? Because you'll get cancer, Robina. So you think she's going to punish you. When if you go home and there's no doctor there, you go, oh, my doctor's not here. Out come the Marlboros and you smoke away. I won't get cancer because she doesn't see me. That's infantile, isn't it? But that's how we think of these things. That's how we think of punitive. And that all comes from anger. We're all like that. That's why we have guilt. I'm a bad person. I did this. We can be Buddhists for years and still not understand this point. We still beat ourselves up. I'm a bad person. I shouldn't have done that. That's just anger. That's meaningless. It's just meaningless. It's not the point. You go mad if you keep saying that to yourself, but that's how we think of religion. So anyway, I'm saying a bit more here. But the general point is, these instructions are Buddha's own. Buddha's come up with these as you go along. Some are that he has actually put together, like when you live together, he's decided you don't do this and don't do that. They're not natural negativities. Like, for example, there's always one that, you quote, that for monks and nuns, we take a vow not to eat after lunch Because, the assumption was when you're in constant retreat mode, because it makes it easier for you to, like we got the vows today, it makes it easy for you to meditate. So we have permission to break that vow if we're working, in like an ordinary life, ordinary world. That's not a natural law. That's whatever the word is they call it. And there's a bunch of those, of course. But the fundamental ones about, what a negative action is, the primordial ones, the fundamental ones like killing and lying and stealing and this and that, they're natural laws. They're natural laws. So the point is that vows are strong because you make a decision. As you all know yourself, as soon as you decide to do something or not do something, then that's when you'll do it. If you don't even know, first of all, you've got to know what you're supposed to do. So if you don't even know the road rules, you won't know when you break them, will you? So as soon as you know the road rules, of course you have to learn them in the beginning, but eventually it becomes naturally, you just internalize them. So you automatically know, you see the sign that says 70, you won't go over 70. Well, depending on who you are. I used to do it all the time. I was so naughty, got so many fines. So, you have to know what the rules are. You have to know how to hold the knife when you eat your dinner. You have to know how to hold the racket. If you don't, you won't know you're making a mistake. It's sort of logical, but you've got to take all this religious, neurotic, dualistic punishment reward mode out of it. And this takes time because that mode is a function of our ego grasping. It's a function of our misconceptions, to have this blame, punishment, reward mode. It's not like that. It's for your own benefit. You are the beneficiaries of Federer. It's so clear. I know when I studied Kung Fu, my teacher, he was such a strict teacher. He would shout and yell at us. I didn't just do what he said because I wanted to please my teacher. That's infantile. I wanted to please my teacher, but I wanted to do it because I wanted to be good at Kung Fu. You've got to see your own benefit from this. You've got to see that you are the recipient of the benefit of living in these vows, So Alex Berzin quotes here, and I think it's Tsongkhapa who says it, that vows are said to be this subtle energy that's visible to clairvoyance. And also even like, for example, the Bodhisattva vows, you carry them from life to life. They're in your mind stream because it's such a powerful decision to make, It just has so much logic psychologically to take vows. The Lamas would all say you cannot get enlightened. You cannot, in other words, there's not enough power in our mind without living in vows, lay vows, pratimoksha, bodhisattva, tantric. There's just not enough power in our minds. There's not enough power in our wisdom, and there's not enough power in our compassion to accumulate the amount of intense wisdom and virtue that will culminate as a Buddha unless we do it within the framework of living in vows. Buddha teaches this. We've got to understand the logic of that. In other words, you've got to make decisions. Just being a nice person, Lamas isn't enough. You're just sort of resting on your laurels. We come into this life program. So, okay, why at the moment in our lives we have a fairly good life? Why are we feeling nice with reasonable health and good things happen? We'd have because we've created so much virtue in the past lives. We must have lived in vows in a past life. If we've come into this life with a natural appreciation for good ethics and a natural appreciation for not killing and not harming, even though we mightn't exactly think it like that, but we just naturally don't want to harm, naturally don't like to lie. Oh, she's such a good girl. She doesn't lie. She doesn't steal. Why do you think that's true? Don't think you're the good mother. You haven't had time to teach that child yet. You came into this life program from your own past practice. And given that every millisecond of what we think and do and say programs our mind, and when we look very soberly at Buddha's analysis of what a samsaric mind is, what the samsaric states of mind are, we know we've got bucket loads of them, and that they're driving most of what we think and do and say, even if we've got good qualities. Then we're going to see that there's not enough power in our good qualities. And right now we're nice people mostly. Think about this. We are nice people. We don't go around raping and killing and stealing too often. It's true. But that's because we've got good tendencies. We must have lived in vows. But also, unless we take vows again, we're resting on our laurels and we're using up our past virtue. And then we'll end up with nothing. It's like you're born into a family where there's bucket loads of veggies in the garden. You've got delicious veggies, and you take them for granted. Oh, aren't I lucky? All these vegetables, so fortunate. Eat them up. The universe is kind to me. Rubbish. The universe is not kind to you. You grew them. It's just that you forgot. So you will happily eat the veggies, use up this good life, but you better grow more of what created this good life. So this is where we have to understand the fundamentals of karma. If we don't understand the fundamentals of karma, we don't understand vows of any level. Not possible. Impossible. Impossible. And this is the law that runs the universe as far as the Buddha is concerned, you know. That every millisecond of what you think and do and say, without doubt, programs you. You are producing yourself every millisecond. It's sort of obvious. If you're sitting on the tennis court for 1 hour hitting balls, everything you do that hour is going to turn you into a bad or a good tennis player. It is logical. It's not as if some things just don't matter. Oh, I practice a backhand for half an hour, but that doesn't matter. What do you think? Of course it matters. It's what produces the tennis player. But we have such a view of self-existent me. Kind of someone else made me, I've just been plonked on this planet, this self-existent me plodding through life. We have no sense that our mind is playing a role every millisecond. We have no sense that whatever we do and say is dropping seeds into our mind, which is programming us into the person we become. When we understand how to be a good tennis player, we would want to know every tiny millimeter of advice from Federer. We would not want to dare do one thing that wouldn't produce the best backhand, and we will practice it for hours and hours. It's so obvious, you know. But because we have this dualistic view, no one's going to tell me what to do. Because you think of a vow like someone's squashing it on top of you. I mean, if you thought Federer was just squashing, instructions on top of you in a tennis court, you won't last longer than one class. You'll leave because you won't see the point. You won't see the benefit. So when I wanted Mr. Lee's Kung Fu, when he would shout at me, I didn't run away. I was glad he was pointing out what I was doing wrong because I wanted to become like Mr. Lee. I wanted to become my Mr. Lee. When we get that, you will love to live in vows. You will love vows. You'll die to know more of them. Oh, give me more, please. Because you want to turn yourself into a Buddha. And what's a Buddha? A person who's rid their mind of all the nonsense, rid their mind of delusions and fears and rubbish, totally transformed their behavior and body and speech, which are the servants of their mind, into the body and speech of a Buddha that can only be of benefit to others. Of course, if you want to become that, you better learn your vows, baby. Because vows, these 3 sets of vows, and there's different kinds within those, are these instructions. These kind of instructions from the Buddha about how to turn yourself into the person you want to become. So you've got to understand the logic of it, not just blindly follow the instructions like a baby. Well, the logic of it is, for the Buddha, that all suffering, forget about the subtler levels of suffering. Look at the grosser levels of suffering. Buddha calls it the suffering of suffering. When the bad things happen to you, forget about past, future, forget about other lifetimes. Don't even think about being born as an animal or something. Forget that. But just, if you could even conceive of becoming another human, look into your life this second. It's pretty quick, you do the research. Do I like, there's a kind of karma called experiences similar to the cause, which is how, when good or bad things happen to you. There's a kind of karma called environmental karma, which is the way the physical world impacts upon you. And there's a kind of karma which is your own personality, your own tendencies, your own habits. Now, ask yourself the question, do I want to be born with a tendency to kill, lie, steal, harm, be depressed, angry, jealous? No, thank you. Well, solution? Don't kill, don't steal, don't lie, try to change your mind. Do you want to have people kill you, lie to you, steal from you, rape you, harm you, not believe you? No, thank you. Well, what's the solution? Don't do it. It's so obvious, it's almost embarrassing. If you don't want those to happen to you, you don't do them because you caused it. Now, do you want to be rich so you can have lots of money, so you can benefit sentient beings on the Bodhisattva path? Not for yourself. Yes. Okay, be generous, baby. It's almost too simple. It seems almost simplistic if we think about it. Of course, it is subtle. It's much more nuanced. But it's a practical, logical law that each being in the universe produces themselves. And Buddha's seen this from his own observation. He's put down some very basic instructions, starting at the very beginning. At the very beginning, you at least start, even before a vow, entry-level junior school grade 1 Buddhism, as he gives us 10 little things to try and refrain from, a broad outline of 10 little don'ts, They're not really vows yet, but they're a general advice that you'd attempt to refrain from. Then when you decide you want to become a Buddhist, you've committed yourself, you take refuge, formally take refuge. Then you take the first set of vows, the lay person's vows, which are 4 of those, 10 plus a 5th one. So you vow not to kill any living being. You break in a major way, which means you cut it at the root, which means you have to take it again with somebody. If you kill a human, you break in a minor way if you kill any other being. So you purify it. Don't steal. Don't take the ungiven. You break in a major way if you take something of value to someone else. If you just take anything that hasn't been given, you break it and you can purify. Lying, you break in a major way if you lie about your own spiritual attainments. You break in a minor way if you say something's not true. Then sexual misconduct, that's interpreted in many ways in the text, but the general way I've been given permission to give it when people take it with me is you don't cheat on your partner. And His Holiness always gives it, Dalai Lama always talks about don't rape. In other words, don't misuse your body based on sexual attachment to harm others. And the fifth one is no intoxicants. When you take the layperson's vows, you don't need to take all 5. You choose, So they're general broad instructions. And what's the character of these? They're actions to stop, except for the alcohol one, they're actions to stop harming others. There's always the heaviest. All actions that are driven by delusions, that's what the definition in general of a negative action is, done with your body and speech that's driven by a delusion, by attachment, anger, etc., etc. That drops a negative seed into your bank vault. But those that are heavier, obviously those that harm others. They all harm you, but those that harm others are the extra heavy ones, and they're the ones that are the cause of you meet that person again in the future. Of course they're going to harm you again. What do you think? Karma's a natural law. It's not random. We all think it's random. We really believe, we might have faith in God, and God has a plan, and if you do have that faith, then you're going to be relaxed, because at least God's got a plan, and He's allowed to keep it in His pocket. You don't need to know His plan. He knows what He's doing, and you have faith in Him. That's a pretty good way to live your life. I'm not criticizing that. But if we're philosophical materialists, there is no explanation. No wonder we all go mad. Why do bad things happen to me? We have no idea why. Buddha's got his explanation. Due to karma. It's a natural law that runs the universe. So the point about vows, as Rinpoche is saying, as Rinpoche says, as Buddha says, quoting Buddha, vows are so potent psychologically that if you compared 2 people, one who didn't have a vow to not kill, let's say, but lived a very good life, practiced lots of Dharma, but didn't have a vow. Then you have another person who merely keeps their vows nicely, has their vows and lives in their vows, but doesn't do much other, overt practice. He said the second person, no question, because of the power of vows, creates billions of more virtuous karmic seeds every second of the day, 24 hours a day, that their mind is imbued with those vows, even without awareness, even without consciousness, even without motivation, even when they're asleep. They're ticking over virtuous karmic seeds into their virtuous karmic seed bank vault, because nothing goes astray, and putting atomic bombs under the habits to kill, lie, steal, etc. And in other words, have the function of purifying those habits and actively creating virtuous karmic seeds. So in other words, it's like an automatic method of watering your garden 24 hours a day. If you don't have clever technology, you've got to go outside and water your garden physically. And then when you come inside, the garden's not getting watered. Well, here, by living in vows, you've turned on the tap and it's 24 hours a day, nourishing your karmic seeds, nourishing your virtue, nourishing your habit not to kill, and purifying. Nourishing your habit not to kill and purifying your habit to kill. 24 hours a day while you've got your feet up eating popcorn, watching telly. Who wouldn't want to live like that? If you understand that, you have confidence in this idea. It's just, so Lama Zopa says just being good is not enough. Just watering your garden 5 minutes a day, proactively, consciously, is just not enough. You need to be watering it 24 hours a day. And that's the power of vows. That's why Buddha loves his vows. And then all the lamas, especially in the Tibetan tradition, would say, you can't really get ahead of the game, and you can't, you certainly won't get enlightened. And if you do keep your vows pretty purely, you can get enlightened in a half a dozen lifetimes, or a dozen or something. Don't quote me exactly. So we've got to think about this. Don't just hear it as religion. Try and hear it logically. Because it's your mind that does it, Mind is everything. But you've got to want the results, not just live in vows out of fear of being punished. This is like infantile. That's worse than ridiculous. It keeps you in line, but you won't get far spiritually. You're the beneficiary of vows, not Buddha, for God's sake. We are the beneficiary of vows. That's a general point I want to make, okay? The general point. So do you want to ask me questions about that so far? I mean, that's almost what I want to say to you. I've got the whole day now. I've got to fill it in with something. But talk to me. Ask me questions about this so far. Anything you feel, anything that you think is stupid, don't worry about it. Just talk to me. Ask me questions.
Hi, Venerable.
Who's talking to me?
Efisha.
Oh, Efisha, sweetheart. Talk to me, darling.
You said we should take vows again and again. Can you talk a little bit more about that, please?
Did I say that? What do you mean? When did I say that? How do you mean by
Just
that?
now. What I have is that you should take your vows again and again.
I didn't mean it. Oh, I see. I don't know if I meant it like that, but let's look at what that means. So you thinking I'm meaning in this life, you keep repeating them. What are you saying? Is that
right?
No,
that's
not
what I'm asking.
Oh, I see. Okay. I see what you mean. No. Okay. So first of all, go back a bit. First of all, everybody can decide you're not going to kill. That's not a problem. But what we're talking here is a particular set of vows coming from the Buddha. It's sort of like, in other words, when Lama Zopa was giving me permission to give the lay vows, for example, I also give, So then when a person takes them from me, they're not, you're taking them. I'm the person who's like representing the Buddha. So I got them from my teacher, who got them from their teacher, who got them from her teacher, who got them from his teacher. And if there's a pure lineage of vows, if it's a pure lineage, it's got to be an unbroken chain of human beings all the way back to the Buddha, which is pretty tasty. So then so that a person who and first of all, you've got to decide too that it's another discussion, that person, like, you need to be clear that person will become one of your teachers, because you're going to be prepared to see them as a representation of the Buddha for you. But you're taking the vows to the Buddha, and you're taking the vows. Okay. So the point is, so if you break your vow, and we're going to go into what causes you to break a vow, the different criteria. So if you say you break your vow, you need to take it again. You would need to take it again to purify it, because you break it at the root, they say. But in general, if we all weaken our vows, we're human, and not going to play you're not going to be playing the perfect backhand every single second. You're just a human being. Of course you're going to do it badly. So we do our best, because it's guiding us. Our decision, I will not this and not that will guide us. So that's why every day, Fisher, doing the purification practice is an incredibly necessary, beneficial, marvelous way to strengthen your vows and to purify and the broken and the weakened ones. But if it's at the root, you need to take it again. But every day, if you purify it, then you're constantly keeping them clear. You're doing your practice. You're doing your backhand perfectly and adjusting your mistakes. But of course, if you have the opportunity, if you meet one of your teachers and they're going to be doing it, of course it'd be excellent to do them again. But it's not as if you have to do that all the time, if you understand the reasoning behind it. Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes perfect sense.
Good.
So if my teacher is given vows, it's fine for me to take it more than once.
Absolutely. Because every time you do, you're purifying your weakened ones and you're strengthening your kept ones. Absolutely. It's marvelous. It's excellent. It just makes sense. It's reiterating your decision. It's excellent to do that. Yes, exactly.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Efisha.
Thank you for your teachings.
Good.
Venerable Robina. Could you speak a little bit about the progression to Bodhisattva vows and the requirements, and then to the highest yoga, Tantra yoga vows?
Yeah, I'll go into that. Yes, I will. I'm coming to that. I will do that. Exactly. Not yet. So let's have more questions. That's what's coming next. But right now we're just discussing, thank you. We're just discussing any questions from what I've said so far. But thank you, absolutely. Go on, Peter.
Hi, Venerable Robina.
Hi, darling.
So my question is, talking about vows and the future lives. I know you are reborn with them, but my question is about how do you access your Buddhist mind when you attain rebirth as a human?
I don't understand the question, darling. Say it again.
When you are reborn as a human, right? You come here with the vows you make on the past life.
No, not every time, not necessarily. The bodhisattva vows, they continue in your mind stream until for future lives. So that's that. But what's the main part of your part of your question? What was the question?
No, that was basically if vows. Not all the vows go through every single life.
But more the point is, the more broad point of your question, my sense is, you said, how do you access your what? What was the second part of your question?
Your Buddhist mind.
And what do you mean by that?
So I've read that you have your your regular human like mind, like when you're growing up, right? Being a kid, normal, depending on the family you grew up in. And then if you already have any type of initiation or something connected to Buddhism of a past life, then there is an access to that, but you have to activate
No, it's sort of right what you're saying, but not quite. It's more fundamental, more simple, more basic than that. Listen, honey, if I see you playing tennis or playing piano, whatever it is, I know that every tiny thing that you're doing on that piano at this second is the direct result of your practice. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
There's not a single thing that you do that isn't the result of your practice. Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
Well, it's the same here. The person you are born to, at the time of your death in your past life, Alexandra, all the karmic seeds that would produce the person called Alexandra when she ran to her mummy's womb at the time of conception, were all triggered at the time you stopped breathing a few weeks before you came to your mother's womb. So the 4 ways your karma ripened in this life. One is one of the karmic seeds from your own past non-killing practice in the framework of living in a vow of non-killing was triggered, that already before you even stopped breathing already programmed you to go to Alexandra's mummy's fallopian tube when she hopped into bed with your daddy a few weeks later, and then you joined the egg and sperm. That was caused by you, and that result of that, the cause of that is your intentional non-killing, living in a vow. That's how come you got a human body. That's how come. So your very humanity is coming from your past non-killing. Now we look at the next lot of karmic seeds. Every tiny part of your mind, every tiny tendency you have, good or bad, to lie, to kill, to be loving, to be generous, to be kind, all your mental tendencies, every tiny part of your personality without exception, those karmic seeds, all from your past habits, not from your mummy and daddy, they were triggered at the same time before you even stopped breathing. So already you're programmed to be called a woman called Alexandra, you're programmed with Alexandra's tendencies, all from your past habits. Third, the next lot of karmic seeds that were triggered before you even stopped breathing, 6 weeks, 7 weeks before you came to your mummy's fallopian tube, was called the experiences similar to the cause, which determines the character of your life, whether you're rich or poor, or people hate you or love you or beat you or kind to you. All your experiences similar to the cause, every tiny thing from the second you came out of your mummy's womb, how your mother saw you, how your father treated you, how your siblings treated you, whether people love you, hate you, kill you, all of that. Who created all that? Alexandra's past actions. And the 4th way, honey, these karmic seeds that produce the very environment in which Alexandra lives. If it's beautiful or ugly, the food is nourishing or not nourishing, it's a war zone, it's a peaceful place, none of this is accidental. Every millisecond of Alexandra's life from the time of her conception, the cause of all those, Alexandra's past actions. So just like on the tennis court, everything you display on that tennis court is the fruit of your past practice. Everything Alexandra is the fruit of Alexandra's past practices.
Thank you.
That's the big answer. Get my point? So, honey child, if you practice, this is the whole point, if you practice living in vows of not killing, not stealing, not lying, and then you go to the Bodhisattva level, and then you go to the Tantric level, and got all these vows under your belt, and you try to live according to them every single day, don't be surprised you wake up next life and have a blissful Buddhist family with access to everything, virtue and goodness, and you just carry on without break in your spiritual path. If you practice piano all day, don't be surprised you wake up as a little child who can play Bach at the age of 3. It's not illogical. And don't be surprised if you wake up next life as a psychopath who wants to eat the mice for breakfast or kill your mother. Whatever you've practiced, baby, is what you become. It's not rocket science, but it's a big shock to us, including all your good stuff, honey. You with me?
Yeah,
and when
absolutely.
we understand this, then you are driven by the wish to make them the absolute most. You want to practice bucket loads of virtue, bucket loads of goodness, not because you're a good girl and someone will reward you for God's sake, because that'll turn you into the person you want to become. That's the point behind all this. What else, people? Thank you, Alexandra.
Well, good morning, Venerable.
Good morning, David.
7 limbs prayer, we declare all of our non-virtuous actions.
Forgive me, would you start the sentence again, David? I missed the first part.
I was saying in the 7 limbs prayer,
Yes.
we declare non-virtuous actions and vow not to repeat them.
Yes.
Isn't that synthesis of taking vows? It seems vows are just a duplication of that prayer. we make offerings, we rejoice in other people's good works.
No, exactly, of course. But I mean, it's reiterating. Yeah, if you've got vows, you just every time you say it, you reiterate. Every time you practice the backhand, you're strengthening your backhand, aren't you? So every time you say that, you're reiterating it, aren't you? Where's the problem there? I'm missing something, David.
Oh, no, that was my point, that the vows just repeat what you do every day with your 7 limb
Well, that's
prayers.
right. You're reiterating all the time. Exactly, that's right. Is that what you're saying? Yes.
That's
Of course,
correct.
absolutely. And the more you remind yourself, that's the point, the more you do it, the more strengthens that, digs that groove in your mind, basically. Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's why we see, as soon as we hear prayer, you're not saying this, we go, oh, I'm saying a prayer to the Buddha to help me. No, it's just, many of the prayers are aspirations. May this, may I. It's like practicing your backhand. You're digging the groove to not kill, to not steal, to not lie, to be brave, to be kind, to be compassionate. That's what these prayers are. They're programming our mind with those tendencies. How marvelous. Yes, absolutely. Yes, David. Who's next?
It's me, Robina. Hi.
Yes, sweetheart. Hi, Aline.
Hi. I'm very interested in the monastic life. Could you talk a little bit more about when you become a nun, with the vows that require, a little bit about the vows?
No, it doesn't matter what the details of the vows are. The general thing is the lifestyle. Huh? What?
Yeah, not the details, but for example, do you mention that when you're a woman, when you're a nun, there's 100 vows more than when
Yeah,
you
no,
are...
so I'm not interested in the details. The broader issue is not that. For me, I don't care about that. The broader issue is, why would you want to become a monk? Why would you want to become a nun? That has to be the thing, okay? So the lifestyle, the key characteristic that differs in the strictest sense, the life of in India they always refer to the life of a householder and the life of a person who's a monastic. And that's coming from this Indian tradition. And it's in all the traditions. It's in all the spiritual traditions. Even the rigorous philosophical traditions. There's this tradition of becoming more monastic, of giving up ordinary life, going more deeply into yourself, giving yourself more time to study, to practice, not to have to worry about mortgages and insurance and babies and children and pleasing your husband. I mean, putting it in a simple way, it cuts out a lot of other stuff. But again, an analogy for this is really important. If I want to become like Federer, I don't say I become a monk, but it's like that. Look at Federer. He had to sacrifice. You've got to become like Federer. Anybody who wants to perfect a particular aspect of themselves, whether it's in a spiritual path, that's where you call it becoming a monk or a nun. Or in tennis, you give up a whole bunch of things. And people don't criticize you for that. They admire your courage. So Federer had to give up ordinary activities. He'd hang out with his own kids and his friends when he was a boy. He gave that up to do what? To practice 7, 8, 10 hours a day, 7 days a week, because he wanted to become the best Federer. So there's always that in anybody who wants to fully commit. So the theory is, obviously, if you give up sex, drugs and rock and roll and the householder's life, the logic is you're giving yourself more time and space to do this job of molding your mind into the mind of a Buddha. It just gives you more opportunity, the more conditions are more conducive to that. But it's very particular. Individuals have different karma. We have to really be clear about what's right for us. I mean, for me, it was a no-brainer since I was born. It was clear to me, my life, I didn't see it exactly, but I never wanted husbands or babies or wives or houses. No interested. Not trying to say I'm noble. That would never interested me. I wanted happiness, no doubt about it. But it didn't frame itself in that way. So when I met the lamas when I was 31, I thought, oh, there it is. It's so obvious, So we've all got different ways, different approaches. And in the end, if you're on the Bodhisattva path, you can have 5 husbands and $100 million and managing a big fat company of millions of people all over the world. And you can, and that's because it's the Bodhisattva path. It's a whole different discussion. We'll go into that another point. This ground level of work is the one called individual liberation. The fundamental level of the vows here are to refrain from killing, stealing, lying, from refrain from actions that harm others. So you're programming your mind in that. And the lifestyle would enhance that and enable you to be able to do that easily. So then you've got space and time for more practice and more study. That's the theory. But many of us in our organization, for example, like, I'm one of them, I don't live a monastic way of life. Well, I sort of do while I'm in Santa Fe here. It's like a monastic way of life. I don't go out much. I don't have parties and things, I don't care. I walk around, I don't go for walks. Even though I'm in this lovely place called Santa Fe, I think I haven't been for one walk in 9 months, except around my table. You don't stumble over gutters and rocks when you do that. Go outside, you fall over. It's ridiculous. You want to look at the sky, but you stumble over a rock, so it's too complicated for me. So I walk around my table with my Buddha statue on it. It's creating some merit. Anyway, I'm just joking now. So anyway, generally speaking, you get my point, Aline. Right. What else, people? Other questions?
Hi, Venerable Robina. I really love the pamphlet that you wrote about karma. And I just have a really basic question
Good.
on the environmental result of living in a place that's dirty and filthy, that's covered by urine and feces.
Oh, yeah, that's sexual misconduct.
I've lived in San Francisco before, and it really kind of describes that place. And so I was wondering, is it the right way to think about it, that perhaps people who are in San Francisco or who've lived there before and who've passed, they created that environment because of all the sexual misconduct?
No, not so much that. It wouldn't, no. It can be, it's more that if you get born in a particular environment, let's say even just a house, let's say you live in a nice suburb, but your house is stinky and smelly with the dogs caca around and always smelly and ugly, that's a particular karmic result of sexual misconduct, but it could have been from 1,000 lifetimes ago. And it's got nothing to do with you being born in that place before. Not like that, no. Not like that, no. But it could be, but it's not necessarily that. Do you understand the point? Do you understand, darling?
Yeah, so it has to be your place.
Obviously, if it's no, not necessarily your house. It's one example. If the whole place where you live, like you might live in a suburb where it's like a bunch of gangsters live there, and it's like a war zone. Your house might be the prettiest house with no violence in your house, but you're in a neighborhood where there's lots of violence and fear. That's from harming others in the past. That would be from, say, abusive language where you're surrounded by abuse, and you have a lot of fear. So it can be specific to an individual house, it can be a whole area, it can be an entire country. It depends on how you experience it directly. Do you understand? Okay. So in other words, the environmental karmic result of killing would be that you get sick and you've got ill health. Now, you might get sick all the time, or you might be a person who would eat a peanut and then die. That's particular environmental karma specifically for you, but your sister can eat peanuts coming out of their ears. Won't hurt her. It can be general and you share it with a lot of people, or it can be personal. Do you understand, sweetheart?
Yes.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. What else, people? Okay. So, in general, then, I'm talking about vows in general, the power of vows, psychologically, how they're so potent, how they frame you, they mold you, they help, and just like learning tennis or learning to drive a car, keep remembering that point. It molds you into the person you want to become. So what are the person you want to become? You want to become the very minimum, a non-harming, non-neurotic, non-deluded, happy, kind, wise person who's got a good life, where you're living in harmony, where you have people who are friendly to each other, where you've got enough money in the bank to survive, where you have access to your Buddhist teachings, where people around are all harmonious. So who doesn't want that? Well, that's what, by living in vows, you're going to get that, baby, because you're programming your mind with exactly those actions. That's the point. It's not you're going to get punished. This is the commonest one we have, and it's the worst one. It's like infantile. Stop it immediately. You are the boss. You produce yourself. You've got to remember that. It's so powerful. So vows, like I said, in general, are behavior. They're not about the mind. They're behavior, body and speech. And this whole level of practice, and all the vows are like this, they're the level of practice called the practice of ethics or morality of refraining from harming. The Bodhisattva vows as well are this. But there's a radical difference in these two, and I'll discuss this now. The whole thing about the lay vows, the set of vows, or indeed the monk and nun vows, it's at the basic level of practice where you're beginning to train your body and train your speech to not harm. You start to work on your mind. You at least refrain from the heaviest level of ignorance, attachment, and aversion, the three poisons. But the main thing is you protecting yourself like a hawk, and you've got to do those 7 little actions before you take the vows. In general, once you've taken refuge, you will make every effort not to kill, steal, jump on the wrong partner, lie, abuse, badmouth behind backs, or rabbit on about nothing. 7 little baby things. You're programming your behavior. You're changing, you're forming your behavior. You're training yourself to play tennis. You're training yourself to hold the racket in the right way. You're training, and you are the beneficiary. Now, the vow is don't kill, which obviously implies another person. That's what defines it as a heavy negative action. But the reason, this is the crucial point, the reason Buddha exhorts us not to do it isn't because it'll harm others. That's what defines it. It is an action that will harm another, but he exhorts us not to do it because it will harm you. That's the point. That's the whole point behind this level of practice. It's for your benefit. You are the beneficiary. And as Lama Zopa says, though, but the rats and cockroaches will have a party because you leave them in peace. They'll be the indirect beneficiaries at this level of practice. So the whole awareness level of this level of practice is protecting yourself. Watching yourself like a hawk, controlling your body, controlling your speech, being cautious. This is this first level. And if you only left at that level of practice, you'd be a calm, content, fulfilled person. You wouldn't have much money. You wouldn't have much sex. You'd love your husband. You'd be a nice person. You'd love your children. But you'd watch your body speech like a hawk. And you'd try and control the grosser levels of your delusions. You're turning yourself into a marvelous person. Now you can move to the bodhisattva path and become more expansive. The character of the bodhisattva level of vows is the same. They're don't this, don't that, don't this. But the crucial difference, one crucial difference between the pratimoksha vows and the bodhisattva vows, the pratimoksha vows, the character of them is to not harm yourself. Others will be the beneficiary. And the motivation, of course, is powerful. But the key thing is just virtually by doing it, you break it. I mean, I think we'll go to that we'll come back to this in a second. But the bodhisattva vows are contingent on the motivation. There's a massive difference there. So the other one about the bodhisattva vows are all about behavior. You're forming your behavior in relation to others. But the first lot are to prevent you from suffering. The second lot are to help you help others. It's a radical difference. They're both the same type in the sense that they're refraining from harming. The first lot are strict, clear, watch yourself like a hawk, not much wriggle room. And the main thing is not to harm yourself. The energy behind the bodhisattva vows, one is the radical difference is you break it based on the motivation. In the first lot, you just break it pretty much. But the second lot, it's the motivation that counts. It's more expansive, it's more sophisticated. It's more showing more awareness. And the reason behind it is to help you break down the barriers between self and other so that you can be of benefit to others. You can't do that until you know how to benefit yourself. It's the same thing about the lamb rim. It's progressive, incremental, gradual, logically, psychologically, like that, you know. So in these notes you've got, and I really want you to study them, to read them a little bit every day as part of your practice. There's a commentary from Kirti Sanchab Rinpoche, which is taken from notes in the 1980s from a friend of mine called Hermes, who did a personal interview and then transcribed. And we've transcribed that, and that's in there with various commentaries from other lamas, Lama Zopa, a couple of others. And then there's a second commentary in the third part, the second part, part 2, is from Alex Berzin, and he's so helpful. And you look into his website, he's got, like I said, he's an incredible resource. You know, so his are really helpful. And he goes into, like so does Kirti Sanchab Rinpoche, but each of the vows, there are 18 root vows in this case, and 46 secondary vows in the bodhisattva vows. In other words, there's more details. The first level, just hold your racket, do a backhand and do a forehand. Now we get to more detail. Exactly, more detail. And it's totally based on the motivation. And Alex Berzin is so clear for every one of those vows. He says you break it if it's based on this, and this. The implication being that you can do that action if it's not based on a mad motivation. You know, you can do an action, you know, for example, okay, the next point is the secondary vows, or he calls them something else. He calls them faulty actions. He's got a whole different translation term. But these secondary vows, or 46 of them, they're all divided into the six perfections of the bodhisattva, which is the final stages of the bodhisattva path. So the first lot of vows are to help you perfect generosity. The next lot are to help you perfect morality. The next lot are to help you perfect patience. The next lot are to help you perfect enthusiastic perseverance. The next lot are to help you perfect concentration. And the next lot are to help you perfect wisdom, realizing emptiness. And there's a few extra added on to that. So they've all got very specific purpose, you know. So you need to study them, look at them, get a feeling for them. And in each case, you break the vow not just by doing it, which is the case of the first ones, but based on your motivation. So it implies there's more awareness. You're more aware of your mind. You're more conscious. You're more capable, clearly. And the other thing about the Bodhisattva vows, and this sounds pretty shocking, but we need to understand this as we study the teachings. You have a vow to break an earlier vow. You have a vow to break an earlier vow if it is of benefit to that person. Now, clearly you cannot play with that. You don't play with that, you know. That's a joke. You've got to be deadly serious. This shows a really powerful level. Most of us aren't at that level. These bodhisattva vows, you can tell by reading them, they're from centuries ago, they're referring to highly evolved beings, you know. So we do our best. So, you know, for example, you know, if I can truly, if you have got the wisdom, and not to come from your own trip, but there's genuine wisdom that if you would harm a person terribly, if you spoke the truth, so you lie to them, but your motivation has to be absolutely clear. That would be harmful to that person. But who's got that wisdom? We have to play safe. Be careful. You can't play with this. Got to be deadly serious. So it implies more advanced. It implies more awareness of your mind, more control over your behavior. It implies living in proper vows at the first level. And that's why when you hear the greatest stories of the greatest bodhisattvas, because they've gone beyond ego, realized emptiness, let's say, plus, you know, got profound bodhicitta, they can kill. This is too shocking for our mind if we hear this, you know. Too shocking for our mind. But this is logical when we understand the teachings. There's always that story of the Buddha, one of his past lives. He was a captain on a boat or something. And there were 500 merchants, and he could see he was already got bodhicitta, he's got emptiness, he's a highly evolved being, got clairvoyance, all of this, an astonishingly high being. And he could see crystal clear the mind of one of these dudes. He was going to kill everybody and take everything for himself. They were these merchants or something. So out of his incredible compassion for the murderer, not for the 499, for them too, but his real compassion for this dude who's going to kill everybody and create incredible negative karma and have incredible suffering in the future suffering realms. This person, the previous life of the Buddha, was such compassion for this person. Happily decided, I would rather have the suffering lives instead. I'd rather go to the hell realms. I would rather suffer than him. So he killed him. Now, if you were on that boat, I'm sorry, you wouldn't see this captain with a halo saying, oh, I'm a bodhisattva, I'm allowed to kill him. No. You just see some dude, a captain, killing somebody for no reason that you could see. He wouldn't be announcing, oh, I'm a bodhisattva, I'm a bodhisattva. No. He would have done it, risked his reputation, maybe chuck him into the water or whatever. But and they give this story that his compassion was so stupendous, his preparedness to himself suffer instead of this person, and thus to kill him, to prevent him from doing these actions. He didn't just not create negative karma, he hastened his own Buddhahood, which is the real point in the Mahayana path, that the motivation is everything. That's what characterizes an action. In the lay vow level, there's not much wriggle room. You just don't kill, don't steal, don't lie, don't badmouth, don't jump on the wrong partner. Just behave nicely, please. Control yourself. Now there's more space because you're more advanced, supposedly. It's very powerful, this level of vows. And all of it is to do with what's most beneficial for the other person. If you look at us now, if you ring me up for dinner, come and have a meal, Robina, and I'm tired, you know. Oh, thank you, Mary, you're so kind, but another day. Well, I break a vow. Why? Because I prevented you from creating generosity. I just thought of myself. We do this every day. It's normal. We don't think it's surprising. It's just self-centered. We're driven by self-centeredness all the time. We're driven by attachment. Don't be shocked by that. The more we study the teachings, the more we see that's true. So in that moment, I check. You've invited me for a meal. I don't want to go. Thank you, Mary. I'd be honored to come for a meal. Even if I've damn well just eaten my dinner, I would do it for your benefit. That's keeping your bodhisattva vow. That's intense. It demands we think of what's best for the other person. Now, indeed, another time, it might be best to say no. You've got to have some wisdom here. So these are much more spacious, but need rigor and clarity, and you can't joke with these vows. They're powerful. And if you don't know those 18, and you don't know the 46 secondary vows, how would you ever know if you've broken them? That's the joke, you know. Oh, I took the bodhisattva vows. I couldn't tell you the 46 offhand. I have to read them. We don't memorize them. It's like you're in the car and you still haven't learned after 25 years of driving what comes next. You've got your hand manual. Now I'll do the second gear. Now I'll go to the brake. You'd crash in 1 second if you haven't internalized your damn vows. But that's how ridiculous we are with our vows, you know. We don't internalize them. We just say, oh, I've got bodhisattva vows. Oh, I've got tantric vows. What are they? I don't know. Excuse me, I'm talking to myself as well here. So the bodhisattva vows are the ones that you keep in your mind. They're so powerful. You don't break them in this life until you've taken them again, but they're in there. They're programming your mind. It's obvious. The more strongly you do something, the more you program to do that again. It's hardly rocket science. And vows just enhance it. Put rocket boost under it. Like watering your garden 24 hours a day. Who wouldn't want to do that? You know? That's the logic of vows. Any more questions? Anything at all?
Venerable Robina, I have a question.
Yes, Barbara, darling.
When I don't know when I am ready to take the Bodhisattva vows.
Sure.
How will I know?
How do you know?
Yes.
How do you know if you're ready to go to the next level of Federer's classes? You want to do it. You want to internalize what you've learned already. You're excited about getting the results. You want to move forward. You really are sincere, and you check the meaning of the vows, and you can imagine, not that you're going to keep them perfectly, but you read them and look at them and check them. Do I want to be like this? Do I want to move to the next level? Do I want to help to become to benefit sentient beings? Do I want to have these vows in my mind stream before I die? Do I want to try and become a Buddha? I'm asking you the question, Barbara. What's the answer?
Yes.
Well, then good enough, girl.
Okay, then I'm ready.
In that sense, yes. I mean, we tend to think, we tend to have, you're not saying this, but we often have the feeling, oh no, I can't ride a bike. I'm not going to commit to ride a bike until I can ride a bike. It's kind of it's catch-22. So by definition, you need vows in order to become a bodhisattva. You can't become a bodhisattva without vows. So if you want to become a bodhisattva and you get excited and you want to go further and you want to be like Federer and you know you're stumbling along doing your best, but you're serious about what you're doing already, you keep your vows already, you keep your commitments, you do your practice every day, you want to move forward, then you're ready. I would say you're ready, clearly. It is a big step, but it's also, if you think about it like I'm saying it, then you'd learn the details and you'd do your best to live according to them every day and aspire and read the bodhisattva literature and get inspired by the whole concept of becoming a bodhisattva. You understand, sweetheart?
I do.
Good,
Thank
Barbara.
you.
Good,
Thank
darling.
you, Venerable
Good,
Robina.
Barbara. Good. Who else, people? Yes, Susie, darling. Talk to me.
Thank you for the teachings.
Good, sweetheart.
Can I ask a question about precepts, please?
Which
Or
one?
not?
Which precepts? The 8 Mahayana. The 8 Mahayana precepts, when we talk today.
Yes,
Yeah,
can I
because
ask something about that?
absolutely. So in general, though, precepts and vow tend to be used synonymously. So but we just often tend to talk about the 5 lay vows and the 8 Mahayana precepts, but they're both the same. So go on. Yes, absolutely. Ask a question. It all fits here. Go on.
So I was invited to a Zoom party ages ago, and I completely forgot, and it's tonight.
Yes.
And I don't want to let them down because
I understand.
that's bad. But equally, it's going to be some chaotic dancing, singing
On Zoom.
on Zoom.
I understand.
And I don't want to dance or sing personally.
Exactly.
Like if I'm just sort of sat there.
Well, why don't you? But I mean, how can you see? What do you do? How do you have a party on Zoom? That's pretty intense. What do you do? You all dance around, but do you see each other dancing?
I've never had a party on Zoom. I presume so.
I mean, okay. You've also got your bodhisattva vows. I mean, these vows, the 24 are quite strict for this day. So my feeling is it's best you keep them and just say you're sick. I mean, what's wrong with being sick? Is that too terrible?
Oh, so I can lie and say I'm sick.
Well, you're keeping a vow. You don't want to say that to people, do you? You don't want to say, oh, I'm living in vows today. I mean, you don't want to say that's ridiculous. That's your own private business. So then you find you have got a bodhisattva vow, so you, with a genuine, sincere motivation to not offend anybody and not to upset, you simply say you can't come, you're sick. I wish I could be there. It's not wrong. You wish you could be there. You wish them all the happiness in the world, but I just cannot come. I mean, that's your bodhisattva vow. You do it consciously for their sake. and because you want to keep your 24-hour Mahayana vows. You want to keep your precepts for the day, not disturb. But you be very conscious about it. You do it properly. So you can't lie in terms of the 8 Mahayana precepts. You haven't got no space to lie there. But because you've got bodhisattva vows, you can lie with the purest motivation for the sake of others and delight in their party and wish them well, and I hope you have a wonderful time, and I wish I was there, and make them happy.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you.
That's my opinion. Okay, darling. But be conscious. Do everything consciously. That's the point. Go on. Everybody else.
I have a question.
Yes.
The analogy, I play a lot of tennis, so that analogy resonates. And when I think about, sort of similar to Barbara's question, I took Pratimoksha, Bodhicitta, and Tantra vows out of a very strong aspiration, very strong motivation, and my skill has not kept pace. So if I look at that analogy, my desire is very much to be Serena Williams, but if I, am trying to go into the splits during a forehand, I will rip my groin off, right? And so I find that sometimes I think that I learn after the fact that I'm trying to act at a skill that's beyond me, even though my aspiration is.
No, it's a good point, Heather. But if you've taken the vows, most of us, if you've taken the vows, you've just said you've taken all 3 sets of vows and you've got them, and are you serious about them? Are you serious in your wish to keep? Well, then you keep them according to your own level of capacity. You might still only be in junior school, but if you can try and replicate Serena, that's okay. But you don't just give them up and say, I can't do it, and chuck the baby out with the bathwater. As long as you keep them sincerely and know them and want to practice them and keep your commitments as well as you possibly can, then you're keeping your commitments, you're keeping your vows, you're keeping it pure.
Yeah. And they don't progress exactly sequentially.
What do you mean, darling? Sorry, what do you mean?
Well, I mean, if you don't perfect the pratimoksha before you move to bodhicitta?
No, you wouldn't be able to. That's a bit like saying you would never. You don't just stay in grade 1 music or tennis and perfect it until you get to grade 2, because we all know you perfect it to a certain degree, and then you go to grade 2, and then when you start to practice grade 2, that helps you perfect grade 1 even more, doesn't it? You can't, you couldn't, there's no way you do it like that, not possible. But if your sincerity and your genuine wish to keep your vows and your true sincerity and your faith in the Buddha and your faith in the Dharma, your faith in the Guru, and you do everything you can properly, respecting it all, that's what keeping it means. That's what the best we can do with sincerity, not wanting to break, to keep our word of honor, to just to chuck it out and not bother doing it, then that's when you tip it down the toilet and you break. Do you understand?
Yeah, I do. That's very helpful.
Good, Heather.
Thank you.
Good. So what I think I should do here, I'll read Berzin, he's helpful, is look at the criteria for breaking, This is really crucial. If you don't know what it is that makes you break a vow, then how do you know you've broken it? And then how do you know how you fix it, So let's look at Berzin, it's quite helpful here. And now there's the next one, chapter 3 is this general list of the 10 non-virtuous actions and their results. And this is put together by Venerable Sangri Kadro. And it's very helpful. The 4 conditions that need to be in place when you do an action, and then how you break, and then the karmic results of these. It's very helpful to read. Very basic instructions. They're not vows per se, but once you've taken refuge, you're virtually committing to use these as the basis of your guidelines for your life, So, to break a vow, so it's the same. Here's the bodhisattva vows, it's similar. There's 2 parts here. There's called wishing bodhicitta, then there's called actual bodhicitta. Wishing bodhicitta. So the first one is often called wishing bodhicitta, but I never seem to know anybody who does this formally in a ceremony. It's when you sort of first start, you don't actually take the vows yet, but you make this decision that you want to be a bodhisattva. And then you go to the next level where you actually take the vow. That's another level. But I very rarely know anybody who does the wishing first. But there's a chapter on that, wishing bodhicitta from Lama Zopa. Then there's the next one is the engaging bodhicitta, where you take the vows. So Berzin goes through very clearly, and then there's Kirti Senchap's chapter, the next. Berzin is, again, so helpful about what vows are and, Yeah. So the 18 root vows and the 46 secondary. And he goes through all of those. Then there are the 4. I'll read these, and it has to be the same for the lay vows as well. Let me read it to you. Okay. The four binding factors for losing vows. Basically, you break a vow by not regarding the negative action as detrimental, seeing only advantages to it and undertaking the action with no regret. So it's got to be very conscious. It's got to be intentional. You know, if you kill an ant and you didn't intend to, you don't break a vow because you didn't intend to. And so these four things have to be there to break a vow. You don't think it's negative. You know you've got the vow, but you don't care in a sense. So then because you're in the habit of doing this, you have no wish to change it, to refrain from it. You even delight in the action. And you have no sense of dignity, no care for how our actions reflect on others, and thus have no intention of repairing the damage. It all seems fairly logical psychologically, you know, and it's got to be quite conscious. Keeping a vow is intentional. Wanting to keep the vow and then breaking it has to be intentional, quite clear. And he gives explanation here. And then, of course, that's why it's utterly necessary to do the four opponent powers at the end of the day, you know, to purify. Because you put atomic bombs under those habits and you strengthen your vows, because the fourth step in the four opponent powers is this resolve. You reiterate your vow. I will never kill. I will never lie. I will do this. I will do that. You're strengthening it. Like doing your push-ups every day, you keep getting better at it. It's got to be intentional. When 99% of our lives we're on autopilot. We're just on autopilot. We're absolutely unconscious. We're just acting instinctively. Most sentient beings do that, and that's the tragedy. We've got to become conscious, you know, to levels of subtlety that we can't even imagine in the modern psychological world, you know. We've got to be in charge of every tiny thought, and we can eventually. That's how we turn ourselves into a Buddha. And vows are these powerful ways to enhance that, you know. I just want to talk about the energy behind the vows and why we should take them and why we would want them and to properly understand them as something beneficial, not something punitive, you know. That was my main thought. My main wish was this. So if you have more questions, please, I'm more than happy. About karma, about anything in general, please, you know, very happy. Otherwise we can finish early. People? Nothing? Nobody? Nothing coming up? Please, I mean, I haven't covered much, so you've really got to push me. Ask me some more questions.
Can you talk, please, about tantric vows then?
No. There's nothing to talk... No, I don't mean it like that. Being silly. I don't mean it like that. It's just another level of vows, and even more sophisticated. But when you read those vows, most of them just seems like more bodhisattva vows. It just seems like more bodhisattva vows. But there's more detail in those, and there's more commitments in those, because we've got this relationship with the 5 Buddha families, and so we have all these different commitments to do this and do that, and think this and think that. There's lots of things there as commitments and vows. Even in refuge, you've got commitments. A commitment is to do something in general, and a vow is to refrain. So in the tantric one, there are different configurations, but there's something like 14 root vows, and then about different groups of 6 and 8 and 4 or something of the secondary vows, and then different ones according to the different levels of tantra, and then you've got all these commitments in relation to the 5 Buddha families, and you've got the commitment to do this, commitment to offer tsog, commitment to do that, lots of different commitments and things to sort of just to continue to keep alive these practices, because they're much more sophisticated level and much more sophisticated basically, psychologically and spiritually. But they're the same principle. You with me, Susie?
Yeah, I've got one more question if nobody else wants to ask
Absolutely, darling.
anything.
Talk as much as you want.
So if I make a mistake during the day, I make a note of it and I come to it at night when I do
No, do it right then, darling. You don't. When you eat poison just now, you don't wait till the evening to fix it.
Okay, so you do it immediately and
Oh
then
God!
at the
The
end
more
of the
you
night,
do it immediately, the more you got. As soon as if you adjust it as it goes, you're on the case. You're practicing Dharma, baby. But the night time is like a little top up, you know.
Right,
They talk about, I think it was Atisha or somebody, one of these fanatic yogis. Every time he had even a wrong thought, he'd leap off his horse, he'd jump on the ground, he'd do his prostrations and do his purification. I mean, we wouldn't even work one step. We would be stuck, paralyzed. So yeah, you're watching it. Did you hear me? What?
Yeah, and what specifically would you do? So 3 times, so if it was a body one, you do the light 3 times
No,
and
darling,
say
no. Keep it more simple. Keep it more simple. If you're playing the piano pedal and you discover you played D instead of F, what would you do? What's your first thing? What would your first thought be? What's the very first step?
do that again.
No, you've gone ahead of yourself. What's the very first step?
Realize that I've done the
Yes! That's regret. Oh my God, I can't believe I paid D instead of F. If you don't do that, you won't go further. There's nothing else to do. You've got to first regret it and acknowledge you did the damn thing. Then you go, what a silly girl, I did the wrong thing. And then, of course you don't. Then you rely on Bach's music. You look at the piano and you rely upon Buddha. I mean, speaking simply. And then you fix it. There's no compassion involved here. Then you just fix it. And you make a decision. I'm not going to do that again. I've got to watch that one like a hawk. It's sort of logical. When you're playing tennis, it's just like that. You're watching it every second. And you're adjusting all the time, perfecting your tennis play, perfecting your backhand, perfecting it every second. Of course, in the beginning, it's hard work and you come home exhausted. But like anything, once you keep thinking this way, it becomes natural. This is a level of awareness that we just don't even think that's important in our life. You understand? We're not even internal, period. We don't even think our mind matters. So in the beginning, it's an exhausting job. It's like reversing the energy of a bomb to become conscious. But like everything, you get better at it until eventually you've perfected it and you're just a naturally good person. You understand? Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Yes, sweetheart, talk to me.
Thank you, Venerable. My question is about the story you were talking about Buddha. I want to know the meaning when Tilopa means Naropa.
Sorry, what, darling? Sorry, forgive me. I missed the first bit of your story. Start again. Sorry, sweetheart.
I'm sorry, maybe it's my connection. I want to know the meaning when Naropa means Tilopa, and Tilopa was killing fishes.
Yes.
Fish.
Yes.
Because you're talking about the stories same like that. Maybe you can give me wisdom about that. Thank you.
So you mean, so the story, so you want me to explain what? What's there to explain there? Ask me the question. Spell it out.
What's the meaning? What? Because Naropa knows Tilopa was his guru when he saw that.
Yes.
So I don't understand why.
Understand why?
What's
what?
the meaning?
Meaning of what?
The killing fishes in that moment.
Oh, you mean why was Tilopa killing fish?
Yeah.
You mean if he's a holy guy, why is he killing fish? Is that what you're asking? Sweetheart, do you want to know why Tilopa was killing fish, or do you want to know why Mapa liked Tilopa? I mean, I hear your question, but it's a very general question, and I want to know what's in your mind behind the question. So spell it out.
I believe it's a profound
what,
meaning in that. I believe in that is a profound meaning. But I don't know.
No, darling, the meaning there, the meaning there is very clear. It's like the story of the Buddha on the boat. If you were on that boat, if you were on that boat with those 500 merchants and you heard about how the captain killed one of the merchants, in an ordinary worldly sense, you'd be shocked, wouldn't you? You agree? Sweetheart, answer me.
It's because I knew me. Maybe. Yeah, maybe.
What do you mean, maybe? I'm going to get to the answer.
Depends because
Not depends on anything. In ordinary world, you're an ordinary guy and you're on a boat and you hear that the captain killed one of your friends. As an ordinary person, without any kind of spiritual realizations or anything, you would be shocked by that. You would think, oh my God, that's a terrible guy. Why would he kill somebody? In a normal, ordinary world, keep it simple. Are we communicating?
Yeah.
Okay, so if a person, so then in other words, the bigger teaching here is, certainly with the Tilopa story, what it's implying that there are levels of qualities that we can all accomplish, called bodhicitta, called wisdom, that mean you've stopped doing negative things, you've given up delusions, you've got spiritual powers, you've got clairvoyance, you've got bodhicitta, you've got realizations of emptiness, but to the world you will look like a bad person. So then that story about Tilopa is he was a high tantric he was a great practitioner, a great tantric yogi, but but there he was doing this outrageous action, looking like he's a murderer, killing fish. But Naropa had pure view. I always forget who's the student. Naropa's the student, or is Tilopa the student? I forget. Somebody tell me. I forget.
I believe it's Naropa the student.
The disciple.
Yeah.
Okay. So then,
if I understand, if I remember fine.
Okay, fine. So then that means Naropa sees Tilopa, but he has faith in him, and he doesn't believe what he sees, which is a person killing somebody. He knows he's a highly evolved being. That's all. That's what it means. Does that make sense? or not? But there's a
Yes,
time,
yes, thank
but
you.
in an ordinary world, we love to, you see, the thing is we love to read stories about this. We love to read all about the holy saints and the yogis and the special things they do. Or, you know, for example, you read about how Milarepa's guru, Mapa, would beat Milarepa up. We love to hear about these stories. But imagine if your guru comes along and shouts at you or punches you in the nose, you would sue him. You wouldn't say, oh, it's really my guru showing me my mind. But you love to read stories about Milarepa being shown his mind, but not my mind, because we all believe in our own karmic appearances. We all believe in ordinary things. So there's a big teaching for us. That's why we've got to have confidence in the viability of even the Bodhisattva teachings. Forget the tantric ones. This is not just some mystical hippy-trippy thing. These teachings are deadly serious and possible. So we've got to study them properly so we can have a basis for understanding things like that, not just with some superstitious mind, but with logic. And that's not easy for us. You see my point, Claudia?
Yeah, I see. For me, it's so hard.
Of course, darling, everybody's
Maybe
hard.
one day I can.
Precisely. But that's why we've got to study the teachings. It's not just a mystical idea. In other words, the essence of these teachings is that Buddha has found that it is possible to remove from our mind all delusions, all fears, all jealousy, all resentment, all anger, all neuroses, all ego. This does not exist in the modern world. It just doesn't exist. So it's a shocking concept. But that's what Buddha has found to be so. So when you become a bodhisattva and you've gone beyond those delusions, let's say, you absolutely can effortlessly do what looks like a negative action, and it won't be a negative action because you don't have negativity. You're doing it for the sake of others. This is fundamental. But we've got to understand the logic of it, not just a vague idea. And that means we have to study the teachings and think about it. Because that's the basis of those two stories. Claudia. You with me, darling?
Thank you so much.
Good. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, thank you. What else then? This is not easy. I swear to you, it's not easy. We love to read the stories about Milarepa and Tilopa and the crazy Mahasiddhas in India and the weird and wonderful and outrageous things they did, all these mad yogis. We love to read about it. But you just check one time when something goes wrong to you and someone looks at you the wrong way, or your teacher just ignores you. We want to sue him. It's too shocking for us. It's just too shocking. It's too shocking, and we have no basis for understanding because we're full of attachment. So we've got to be so cautious and careful with these things. Because it's spiritual, we mystify it, you know. Don't mystify it. It's all based on logic. It's all based on logic, I promise. We've got to go one step at a time in studying it, thinking about it, you know, understanding this meaning that we can rid the mind of rubbish, and that you can be a person driven by such compassion, such wisdom, that you will do anything to benefit a sentient being. There's another story I always tell. Lama Yeshe, back in the late 70s in Kopan Monastery. Our friend Harry, who's now meditating in Crestone, a few hours north of me. North? Yeah, north. So he told this story about how he was helping a monk, one of the Sherpa monks there, who was very sick. And he'd found a doctor to help the monk. Then he happened to mention to Lama Yeshe, who's his guru, that he'd found a doctor. And the Lama just kind of dismissed it and said, it doesn't matter, he doesn't need a doctor, he's okay. So Harry trusted Lama's wisdom. So he didn't get the doctor. So then Harry observed that this monk got sicker and sicker and sicker. And eventually he went up to the mountains and he died. He died a very good death, in fact. Now that sounds quite shocking. That sounds like Lama Yeshe doesn't care. But this is the whole point of the story. Lama Lundup, the abbot at Kopan, explained to Harry, and Harry had faith in Lama Yeshe anyway, in his wisdom, that Lama, because of Lama's wisdom, because of his clairvoyance is the lowest level realization. Anybody can get it. You go to the mountains for a couple of years, you'll get single point of concentration, you'll get shamatha, you'll get clairvoyance, baby. It's a natural potential of every mind. We've had it in countless lifetimes. No big deal. And I don't mean hippy-trippy, I was a princess in 14 lives ago. Exact, crystal clear clairvoyance, where you can see exactly. Why can you? Because you've accessed your subtler mind, which has the power to see the past and the future and the minds of others. It's just the way it is. It's in all the literature. It's there. And this has been around for thousands of years. These Indians invented this. Not invented clairvoyance, but invented the technique that enabled you to develop this. This is nothing special. But you've got to have it to benefit sentient beings. Not only did he have clairvoyance, he had wisdom. He realized emptiness. He could see things exactly. Not only did he have that, he had bodhicitta. So he could see clearly the mind of this monk. He could see clearly the karma this monk created in 47 past lives, whatever it was. He could see clearly that if that monk had had a doctor, he would have got better and he would have had a fine life, but he wouldn't have purified that heavy negative karma, and next life would have been much, much worse. Now, excuse me, who's got that kind of wisdom? We don't even consider the possibility of that kind of wisdom. And that's possible, forget even the tantric path. That's the bodhisattva path. So don't take it lightly, this bodhisattva path, you know. The teachings are outrageous, but you've got to understand the logic of them by studying the teachings. Not just having faith in them, it's not enough. You've got to understand the possibility that a person has the power to get single point of concentration, to get clairvoyance, to go beyond delusions, to quit the delusions, to realize emptiness, and to get bodhicitta. That's what that qualifies you. And then you grow this to a limitless degree of incredible power. Then you're really capable of benefiting sentient beings in any way they need. Peacefully, wrathfully, whatever method is necessary. It'll only be coming from the right place. It can never be coming from ego. Now, the difficult part is Claudia's question, who sees the mind of Tilopa? Who saw the mind of Lamayeshi? Who could see the mind of that captain in a past life? We can't, because we're as thick as posts. We don't have clairvoyance. We can't see, and we see whatever we believe in our mind. We see the entire outside world through the lenses of our attachment, our anger, our neuroses, our ego, miniature, pinhead-sized view. And then we judge. He this, she that, how dare this. That's how we spend our lives. So this is kind of intense stuff, you know.
I have a question.
Okay, good.
Sure.
Speak to
Yes,
me.
it's one of the vows in the 46 secondary vows.
Good,
It's
yes.
about livelihoods,
Yeah.
which talks about flattery or using smooth words
Yeah.
to fool others. And it concerns me because I have a career in advertisement,
Yeah.
which when I chose that 17 years ago,
Yes.
I had no idea about Buddhism.
Of
So
course.
my question is, how literal should I take this vow?
But darling, if
Because,
your motivation is pure, and listen, stop, honey, read the whole paragraph. What's the motivation? Read it. Read it out to us.
So it says, such earning your living through a wrong livelihood. It says, such livelihoods are through dishonest or devious means, primarily, or 5 major types. And then A, pretense or hypocrisy. B, flattery or using smooth words to fool others. C, blackmail, extortion, playing on people's guilt. D, demanding bribes or exacting fines for imaginary offenses. And finally, giving bribes to gain something larger in return. We resort to such means because of total lack of sense of moral and self-dignity.
Okay, good.
Or reserve.
So now,
There you go.
which one of those are you doing? Be precise now. We understand the broad question, but now be precise. Which of those are you consciously doing, Aline?
Consciously, I don't think any of
Well,
this.
then that's the end of the discussion. You're not breaking your bodhisattva vow. You just have to watch it like a hawk, and you be sincere in the way you sell something. If you're trying to market something, don't lie about it, but you can still sound very powerful, and you can convince people to buy it. That's okay, but you're not lying, and you have an underlying wish to help people. But if you start to lie and flatter and to manipulate just to help benefit you, then you're breaking your vow then. Come on.
Yeah. So in this case, if I myself start realizing that much of this work, it is about manipulating people.
I know, but what are you trying to sell? Guns? Toilet paper?
No.
What?
Could
What?
be, yeah, content. It's
Who?
no
What?
guns,
What?
no.
What?
Just food, for example, if that's a product. It's
Okay.
nothing like
well, darling, in the end, it's up to you.
harmful
In
as
the
such.
end, it's up to you to decide if you can continue to develop your qualities and become a bodhisattva by doing this job. You have to decide. And there's more to it than just, oh, it looks bad. You know, you can still be kind to your colleagues. You can still be using your money to help others. There's many ways you can do, because most livelihoods are ridiculous. Most livelihoods are attachment-based, you know, and they're not necessarily so pure. I mean, you could probably, you know, work in a toilet paper company and create a lot of virtue because you're good to your roommate, you're good to your people, you're kind to you use your money well. You can, you know, or you can work in a very nice green environmental thing, but be wicked and naughty and manipulate people. So it's not even a question of the product. It's a question of how you do the job and what the benefit you bring to others and how kind you are to your roommates, your colleagues and everything, you know. So there's more to it than is it a good object or not.
Indeed.
Do you understand?
All right. Yeah. I do.
Good.
Thank you.
Okay, darling. What else, people?
Hi, Venerable Robina. I love the ship captain story.
Okay.
And like you said, I wouldn't be able to recognize that he was doing it with bodhicitta
That's
motivation.
right. Exactly.
But I have a cheeky question. I was wondering,
Good.
there's this saying in, an urban saying, game recognizes game. And I'm wondering if it applies here too, where people who are in that level, at the bodhicitta level or even lower, they can recognize each other, so they'll know, okay, that person is doing it.
Oh, of course, you would automatically. If you've got the same level of realization, like if you're the highest level tennis, only you, Federer, would recognize what Serena's doing. Most other people would be too subtle. So it's exactly the same here, darling. Of course it is. Whatever level of realization you've got, and you'd know immediately, whoever you see, you'd know immediately, are they higher than you or less than you? Of course you'd know that. That's your wisdom, sweetheart. Without doubt. It'd be very precise. Of course it is. So then your question is?
Yeah, so I'm curious, who does, I don't know if he does, but does the Dalai Lama publish or, recommend other people around the world who he
never.
believes?
No, never. None of the lamas do that. Ever. It's up to us to check. They might, okay, Lama Zopa would recommend his lamas. Of course he would. He says, he's my holy lama. So because Lama Zopa is my lama, I would automatically see one of his lamas, not necessarily as mine, but I'd have faith in him. I'd have confidence in him, or I would know he's valid. But they mostly don't go around saying who's a good and who's not. That's very much left up to the student to check, to have confidence. And that's the biggest problem in our culture. We leap into these relationships with spiritual teachers. We get all excited, all carried away. Oh, he's so charismatic, he must be a Buddha. And then because he looks at you the wrong way or he jumps on another girl, we then have a panic attack. And I'm not being sarcastic now. It's not easy. We are too emotional when it comes to choosing spiritual teachers. And there's another whole kettle of fish. Maybe it's a good topic to talk about, It's a very powerful one. We have so much emotion, so much attachment, so much limited view. We so base everything on our feelings. But that's why all in the teachings, they say you should check a guru for 12 years. You do deep research. You check their quality. You check their disciples. You check their teachings. And then when you're ready, you want to request them to be your teacher. And then you have confidence that you see them as a Buddha, and then whatever they do will be a teaching for your mind. This is deadly serious stuff, but it's not that easy for us. It's very important. Are we communicating?
Yes, thank you. And I have an additional question.
Yes.
Related to what Eileen just said,
yes.
Connecting these two ideas, is that I'm not ready to renunciate or anything like that. Not close. That's not my.
But so before you know, I don't want to argue with you. But what do you mean by that exactly? What do you think that means?
Oh, I still want to be in lay life and have all the obligations that come with it.
Oh, you mean you don't want to be a monk or a nun, you meant by that?
Yes, that's
right. Okay, that doesn't follow.
Right.
You haven't got renunciation. Renouncing is not renouncing a lifestyle, it's renouncing attachment. We all have to do that.
Okay, thank you for helping me be more precise.
Go on, darling.
So in the meantime, while I'm in lay life, it would be nice to be able to work for a company, let's say, where the CEO is one of these people who's like Lama Yeshe.
Absolutely.
Talopa, who may be a realized being, but I just can't see it. And so that's the connecting those two. I'd love to.
I know, but that's a really good point. What the Lamas always say is, first of all, you got to have the teacher, but you don't go by you don't buy the teacher. You trust what they say. You look at the teachings. So the bottom line is, you might not know that, say, somebody is a bodhisattva. But if you look at the way they run their company, if you look at their morals, if you look at the way they hire people, if you look at the way they pay people, that doesn't follow, because bodhisattvas can also take a wrathful aspect and run a lousy company, but they've got a longer term vision. But if you just look at the morals, my sense is every time you walk into a restaurant, and if it's really run beautifully, you know that the boss is a really good boss, and it trickles down all the way from there. So I think you can do your research on an ordinary level there. You don't need to have clairvoyance. They mightn't be a bodhisattva, but they've got good qualities, and they treat their staff well, and they run the place nicely, and they're trying to help the world. I think that you can easily judge. In other words, we've got to go by what level of wisdom we've got. We can't do more. So if you want, often what happens among Tibetans, they will do, some lamas do consultations, like they do what they call divinations. And you might check, for example, that wouldn't be an uncommon thing for us students. If you've got a choice of 3 jobs, and they might, say, what is the most beneficial job for me? And it might be this third company. Even though it mightn't be the best company, there might be other things that the Lama sees that's more beneficial for you, for your own personal practice. So there's more things involved. But still, you can go by the company and look at their record and look at how they treat their people. I think you can do that. You can't do more. If you've got somebody else you trust who's got clairvoyance, then great. go for that, consult them and ask them. You see what I'm saying?
Yes. Thank you.
And we've got to keep it on the ground and use our common sense. But sometimes on an individual level, like I just suggested, there could be some job that might be the best for you, that could be the hardest job for you, but you'll learn masses and it'll help you on your own personal path. That's also very possible. Do you understand my point?
Yes.
Good. Thank you, sweetheart.
Thank you
so much, TH. What else, people?
Venerable Robina.
Yes. David, talk to me.
Yeah, I occasionally attended a monastery in New York City. It was a Zen monastery.
Yeah.
Abbot was held in extremely high esteem. He was so well regarded. And there are accusations against him from some of the nuns.
Yes.
Sangha was thrown into serious disarray. The abbot was replaced. And, my first inclination was not to believe the accusations. I was really torn. And I don't know, and those situations are so common in, Hinduism and, I don't know about actually other Buddhist situations.
Well, I mean, look at the Catholics. Look at these poor priests, I mean, they're just, look at all the pedophilia for years, this is tragic. It's not just in religion, is it? But it's so often, it's such a common story these days, in terms of a person who is like a spiritual teacher and disciples. That's what you're suggesting, isn't it? It's very sad. It's very unfortunate.
Those were the ones making the complaints.
Yeah.
And I don't know if, you were talking about, well, we can't judge the mind of other beings that are so much more highly evolved than we. So I don't even know what kind of context I should place.
I understand. This is such
I love the abbot. I was really so impressed with him as a figure.
Yes, exactly. I think it's a huge, it's kind of interesting, this last 15 minutes of our talk, we could spend this next 4 hours going into this, and it's an incredibly important one to discuss, It's kind of very, very, very fascinating. So, okay, let's just start talking about it. Everything is according to your own level. First of all, there's levels and levels. And, if you, for example, one other person can be asking this question, and I might get the sense that that person is really fragile and they've been abused all their life sexually by their father, and they ask this question. Well, my answer to that person will be completely different to my answer to another person, and indeed develop according to my wisdom, which I don't have much of. I would answer according to the person's capability, So if there's one, I would say that's outrageous. How dare you go anywhere near that person? You just keep away. You don't have to judge. You leave them there and you just leave it alone, because they wouldn't know how else to see it. But depending on how high a person's practice is, Because the trouble is, because as soon as it comes to sexual misconduct, if it was just stealing or lying, it wouldn't be so shocking for us. But somehow we've got such a powerful emotional response to what we call sexual misconduct, which is such a classic history over the centuries. It's such a classic thing, typically between, an aggressive male and the victim being a female. And of course, it's so clear. It's so clear how inappropriate that is. Nobody has the right to be violent with anybody in any other method or form. That's a simple fact. So it's depending on the levels, So on one level, you could talk from the first level of the teachings is don't kill, don't steal, don't do sexual misconduct. There's no wriggle room. There's no discussion. So from that point of view, from that perspective, from that context, you would hear about this. And this, I think, would be follow for everybody. You would hear about, you like this person. You would hear about these things, the complaints of the nuns. Now, this is difficult, but my feeling is, in ordinary life, you know yourself, David, that you are not a saint. You do bad things and you do good things. But we all know, let's say you got a girlfriend and she's really angry with you because you did one bad thing, and this is what happens when we have anger. We paint the whole of David with that one bad action that he did, and she will never forgive you and never forget it. And as far as she is concerned, David is an evil person because he did this action. Now, we know that's what we all do. We paint a person with one brush and we do it to ourselves. I did this and that and I'm a bad person. But it's clearly more nuanced than that. The bad things you did, you might have lied to that girlfriend, you might have cheated on her, but it doesn't define the whole of David. David has got other good qualities which have not been contradicted by that. Now, that's the big problem now, I would suggest, politically. You know, like look at Woody Allen, for example. I mean, I'm not going to give any opinions about anybody, but there's Woody Allen making lots of movies. But now has been accused for 30 years by one of his daughters of abusing him sexually. I mean, if you start using that, and I'm a most fundamentalist feminist, believe me, since the 70s, I've been a radical lesbian separatist feminist. I've done my political work 45 years ago. That somehow it is obvious that doesn't paint, we are so fanatic in how we paint people. If you do one good thing, we think the person's a saint. It's clearly not true. If we do one bad thing, we think the person's a sinner. Delusions exaggerate in their nature. They exaggerate. I'm not even spiritual yet. Not even going anywhere near a spiritual teacher yet, David. So I can see, you know yourself if you've done one bad thing, but your girlfriend forgives you. But you know that the other qualities are there. It's so healing because you know it's not the only part of you. And this is the key point the Buddha's making. The negativity doesn't define you. That's why bodhisattvas have love and compassion for every living being. They don't define us by our negative actions. But that's what anger does. And we love anger in our culture. And so, I mean, according to these criteria, there's not going to be one single white male artist on the planet since Greece who will be fitting to be a decent artist if you start looking into their private lives. They probably abused every woman they had a relationship with. Who cares? Nobody, I mean, that doesn't mean their art is not good. You can like them or dislike them. For me, it's just simply much more nuanced than that. Yes, people do bad actions, and yes, people do good actions. Yes, racist is racist, and we've got to really fix it, and sexism is sexism. But we've got to navigate it in a more skillful way and see the Buddhist approach, which is the negative actions don't define us. The positive actions do. So for me, that general thing is behind it. Now, if it's a spiritual teacher, and this is where in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, especially the Vajrayana, where you commit to a relationship with a spiritual teacher, and that's a much more advanced level, and that's only within the tantric level mostly. And then you really are practicing this view, which is a much more sophisticated level, which does not exist in the Zen tradition, does not exist even in the general Mahayana Sutra tradition, and it certainly doesn't exist in the Hinayana tradition, where you learn to literally see that person as a Buddha. And then when you know the bodhisattva teachings and you know that a bodhisattva can go and kill or steal or lie because they're not driven by delusions, then it's logical that a bodhisattva could also jump on a nun. Now, I know this sounds so shocking. I don't want to shock you, but I'm trying to use logic. We have to first establish, is it possible for a person to have pure mind? Is it possible to be a bodhisattva? Is it possible to get rid of delusions? And if it is possible, then it is possible to do an action based on clairvoyance, like Lama Yeshe, allowing that monk to die. On the face of it, it looked terrible. But if we can take the view that Lama was a bodhisattva, or a Buddha, not to mention, who has clairvoyance and can see that was the best way to benefit that monk, if we can take that as a possibility, but you're not clairvoyant, you don't know Lama's mind, then you have to have confidence in Lama. And if you have this teacher, this person who you think is a good person, everything you got from that person is still not denied, I would suggest. This is not politically correct. Is not denied by the bad thing that he's done. So that's up to you. If you hear that, you don't know if it's true, you don't know if he's valid or not, but you leave it there. If you're not qualified to make a decision about something, you can't have an opinion, but we all want opinions. But you don't have to prove it, you leave it there. You delight in what you got from this man. Everything you learned from him has not been denied by the fact that he might have jumped on a nun. So for me, it's a more nuanced thing. You leave it there. Don't be angry. Don't believe this person. Don't take sides. You keep it there. You've learned so much from him. You keep him in your heart, and he's one of your spiritual teachers. It's just some of my thoughts, trying to use Buddhist view as a basis for my thinking. What do you think, David?
Well, this happened in New York City.
I know about it, yes.
In Japan.
Yeah, I understand.
They sent him back to Japan.
Yeah.
If it could just be a cultural difference because...
No, but I'm talking about your view, David. Tell me about your view based on what I said. Does it sound comfortable?
Based upon my view, I still love him.
That's what I'm saying. That's all I'm talking about. We'll leave it there. So leave it there, David. You see, we think we all have to have an opinion about everything. You don't. Let it be. You're not clairvoyant. Leave it there. Take what you got from this man and be content. What's wrong with that? Nothing wrong, is there? Do you agree with that? Or is there more to it, David? What do you think?
That's the way I look at it.
Yeah, but for some people in the West, we find that being political. We find it not caring. We feel we have to stand up there and demonstrate and go against and take a position. I mean, it's quite a hard thing to navigate. You know, I'm talking more broadly. But David, it's comfortable for you. Some of the things I said that's what you feel as well, is it?
But I mean, you were saying we shouldn't be presumptuous about motives or the actions of a Buddha, for example.
But forget a Buddha, David. I'm not even talking about a Buddha. If I'm your, we shouldn't be presumptuous about anybody. The Tibetans have a saying, you don't know who anybody is, so do not judge. This is too heavy in our culture. I'm not talking about Buddhas, because who knows who a Buddha is? We don't know. So it's best to mind our own business, to protect our mind, not continually find fault and be political and shout and yell and scream and just believe in what we see. Because we realize we've got further to go, because we realize we don't have much wisdom, we just have to have humility and patience and leave things there and stop jumping in the deep end with 47 opinions, is what I'm getting at. What else can we do? If you're not qualified to have an opinion about somebody, then what are you going to do? Just leave it there. You've got no choice. It seems to me logical. I'm talking about ordinary people, David. Forget your spiritual teacher. What do you think? Do you see my point?
Well, if we look at, for example, Wagner, who might have been, the most hideous racist, but his music was really...
Yeah. That's it.
And the fact that he was an ugly person, it doesn't really detract from the kind of music.
See, that I think is the more nuanced way to look at it. That's exactly right. I mean, in the end, no, it's true. So we got to sort of, it's like, but because that's exactly the point, like I said about you and your girlfriend. If she just judges you based on the 2 bad actions you did, and we know that's very painful, and that's what people do, it's just not fair. She's not seeing the whole picture. And that's what anger does. Anger does that. Anger is very narrow, very fixed, very fundamentalist, and it wants to find fault, and it wants to stick its nose in and have a very firm opinion. Anger is so heavy, and that's the suffering here. That's the problem here, anger. Do you understand what I'm saying, David? It's not an easy point, this. This is a really tough one. We've got to really think this stuff through. It really demands a lot of inner work, step by step by step in our own levels, to see how this is a possibility. We've got to think it through, step by baby step, Because it's not what I'm saying is not politically correct. I mean, when I was a radical lesbian feminist, whatever I was, back in 1971, I would have punched you in the nose if I heard you speak such garbage, I would have shot you, put you in prison. Are we communicating, people? All this is food for thought. Please.
I have a question.
Yes,
it seems like the place where I get confused in all of this. Yeah, I understand and accept and believe that people are neither good nor bad, and I'm not the one to judge. Where I get confused is if that sort of truism is conflated with now you can't judge whether or not actions are harmful or helpful.
But who's saying that? That's not what's being discussed, Heather. Actions are actions are actions. That's not the discussion here. So take it look at the level at the very first level of practice is the point about the levels of practice, a really good point here. The very first level of practice, there's no wriggle room. Actions are all we care. So that's why in the Buddhist perspective, the external, there's Buddha. This aspect is what appears to the world, and that's got to be impeccable. So that's impeccable. The Bodhisattva one is the secret one, and the Tantric one is the most secret, internal. So on the outside, there should be impeccable behavior. There is no doubt. So let's say that, that Zen person could be a Buddha, could be not. From the ordinary world point of view, if he did something that was illegal, it's appropriate that he go to prison. No one's arguing with that. Now, if he were a Bodhisattva, he wouldn't complain. He'd know what he was doing. That captain on the boat consciously killed somebody. He could have been put into prison. He wouldn't complain because he consciously chose it. So according to actions are harmful and actions are not harmful. We go by the action, that's fine. But you don't know where the person's coming from. So then you've got to decide how to deal with that.
Yes, that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
That we actually are judging the actual action. The motivation I can't possibly know.
That's right. That's the whole point. That's the difficult point. That's the whole point.
To judge the action.
So and that's what's powerful. Lami, yes, she's action.
Annie Hall, and I can judge the action of molesting your daughter. Those are different actions.
Say that one again, do you? What are you saying?
You can judge the action of making Annie Hall, which is a beautiful film, and the action, supposedly, which I don't presume to know, of molesting your daughter. Those are both coming from the same person, but they're different actions.
So therefore, what are you saying?
So I'm saying you judge them differently, and one doesn't negate the other. So because you're a great painter, you're a great filmmaker, it doesn't negate you're also a murderer. You're both.
Yeah, but that's a different discussion. That's another discussion. That's a different discussion coming from the first point, which is actions are actions and you can judge an action. That's a bad action, that's a good action. There's no doubt about that. Killing is a bad action. Jumping on your little daughter is a bad action. You know, that's a simple fact. Then how you work with that in relation to the other parts is what you're implying. And that's the part that's hard in our culture because we're so fundamentalist. If you say one word, you say the N word once and you get thrown out of your job. You say you look at a girl the wrong way, the woman the wrong way, you get thrown out of your job. We're a bit extreme. And I'm not, again, trying to be political. It's hard to navigate this with a mind that's very attached and very angry. If we have a more reasonable mind, we can navigate it better. So the Buddhist approach is these different levels of practice. When we understand these, then we understand the first level is exactly to do with actions. Don't kill, don't steal, don't lie. And there's no discussion there about motivation. Now we go to the Bodhisattva level, which is much more profound. It's still actions, but now what determines whether you personally create negative karma is your motivation. And indeed, based on Lama Yeshe's action, which looks terrible, looks like he didn't care, but we can deduce, let's assume, or let's believe that Lama Lundrup knows he's got the wisdom to see the mind of this monk, and what the action he actually did benefited the monk. That's the part that's hard for us in our culture. That's the part that's hard, you know. That's the part that's hard because we don't think that's possible. That's why we've got to study these Bodhisattva teachings to get how that's a possibility, because that does not exist in our culture. There's no space in our culture psychologically or in the neuroscientific world where a person can have a pure motivation for killing. But we do to some degree there are laws, aren't there, that if you really do it out of compassion for the baby, then this is what's interesting. The Buddhist approach would be this. You're a mother, and you have rage against the killer of your baby, so you'll kill your baby's murderer. People will get you off. But the Buddhist view is you were angry, so you created heavy negative karma when you killed that baby's murderer because you came from anger. But our world would say you're okay, you're allowed to do it because you're natural to be angry. Do you see what I'm trying to say here? The Buddhist one is more subtle. If you do anything with anger, you create negative karma. I don't care how many babies you killed. And that's heavy. Of course it is. So it comes to what's in your mind, your motivation. So as you're a bodhisattva, you can do So I think I've said the point. But it's a typical one. We've got to navigate it. But we've got to have a basis for navigating. And here we're discussing the Buddhist psychological model of the bodhisattva path. It's not just some wishy-washy, I'm going to be a nice person. It's detailed explanations of what the mind is, how it functions, which you study in high school. Then you go to the bodhisattva path and you can navigate all this stuff. And then the tantric path, even more powerful, psychologically. It's a pretty intense view, you know. It's not an easy one, I'll tell you. Not a joke. Okay, so I think this is a really powerful topic. We need to talk about it. We need to be clear, you know, to have food for thought. We've got to find our own way through it. We've got to navigate. But this is the point about, like, if we were discussing math here, we're discussing a slightly more complicated level of math. This is the biggest problem in our culture, I think. We know that if you haven't studied math, you have no basis for an opinion about somebody. You wouldn't have a basis. If you hear Einstein talk about, complicated math, this is a very simple point. If you haven't studied math, you know that you're not qualified to have an opinion. It's very simple. But we don't think that when it comes to this kind of thing. So if I'm not clairvoyant, then I am not qualified to say whether Lama Yeshe did a bad or a good action. But we think we're all qualified because we believe in whatever we see. We don't think we have a viewpoint. This is Buddha's really profound point. But everything we see on this planet is seen through the lenses of our mind. So if I've got a limited, angry, narrow, neurotic, deluded, arrogant mind, can you imagine how the world would look to me? But we don't even think we have a viewpoint. We think what we see is objective reality. That's what Buddha's saying by being in samsara. This is the killer of the suffering we all have. We live in these self-created nightmares and we don't even think that we have a view. We all think we're qualified to think everything about everybody. It's beyond ignorance, you know. It's very interesting. Because we don't have this level of wisdom in our culture, with respect, you know. We have to think it through, not just swallow it whole. And then act according to our own level. Do what we can. One step at a time, you know. Okay, you people, I don't want to put the prayers up. We'll just say them in our hearts. Just say the words in our hearts. We just think, Here we've been this last couple of hours, talking about the vows, the power of vows, what they mean psychologically, to think about whether you want them, the benefit of them, to turn yourself into this marvelous person that you can become, to be inspired to do that for your sake and the sake of everybody you have contact with, And may this aspiration to get wisdom, to see clearly how things exist, to see the minds of others, to see our own minds, to have a sound basis for knowing what's going on this planet so we can navigate it and develop our own marvelous potential for the sake of sentient beings. Jangchun Semchok Rinpoche, Ma ke panam ke gu chi ke panyam pa me pa yang, gong ne gong du poba shog. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, sweethearts. Much love.